Straight to the politicians. Now, gatherings outside parliamentary buildings are usually banned, but in a surprise move, the army is allowing people access. The cabinet formed by President Mubarak in response to the protests is coming under pressure. The newly appointed culture minister, Gabr Asfour, has quit. His family say it's due to health reasons, but Egypt's main daily newspaper, Al Ahram, says Asfour, who's also a writer, was criticised by his literary colleagues for taking the post. He was the only new face in the new cabinet. Egypt's uprising is being closely watched in Iran. The Iranian parliament speaker Ali Larijani blames the US and Israel for bringing instability to the region. He told Al Jazeera's Nick Clark why.
If you look at the countries in this region, many are monarchies, or even those which are republics in name, like Egypt or Tunisia. Their presidents are in power for 30 years. In Iran, democracy is a serious matter. Presidents can only be in power for 2 terms. People vote and politicians change according to their will. But in Egypt, you have a dictatorship. America has created a certain situation for them. We are very clear in our position towards the US and Israel, as we believe they have brought the most oppression and injustice to this region. Behind the scenes, they're the ones that are preventing the Egyptians from making their revolution into a success. The Egyptians have a peaceful protest, but why are they reacting to them with bullets and violence? Scenes broadcast by Al Jazeera show they have thrown horses and camels at the people in Tahrir Square. Americans haven't grasped the reality. It seems they are supporting some kind of revolution of camels and horses, not a true democracy and freedom, as is the wish of the Egyptian people.
Here's some other news now. A suicide bomber in a school uniform has attacked a military base in Pakistan, killing 30 troops and injuring 18 others. It happened in the town of Mardan in northwest Pakistan. The attack came early on Thursday as army cadets were doing their morning training. It challenges government claims that they've weakened fighters in the lawless tribal areas along the Afghan border. Well, let's go live to our correspondent Kamal Haider, who's in Islamabad for us. Kamal, a suicide bomber in a school uniform. What more can you tell us?
Well, what we know is that the attack went into that compound. This is a compound which is in the middle of the city. It has its security gates. This suicide bomber was able to get through one of those gates. At the time, the military soldiers were practicing in that large ground area where they carry out their training and all, and then detonating himself up. Now, as far as we are told, this was indeed a young boy, perhaps as young as 13 years old, even though there is some confusion as to the exact age. But the fact that he was able to get through into the Punjab Regimental Center, that is what the area is known as. This is a military area. It has been attacked in the past with heavy casualties. So, of course, that attack taking everybody by surprise.
Yeah, it is a terrible story, Kamal. As you say, the same training facility has been attacked before. Is there a problem with securing facilities like these against potential attackers?
Well, first of all, it must be understood that it's almost impossible to stop suicide bombings. There have been cases in which young boys have been used. There have been cases where women have blown themselves up. Hundreds of boys were trained in the Swat Valley to carry out such attacks. So it's virtually impossible to stop a suicide bomber from carrying out the attack. However, the interesting question here would be, was this a suicide bomber who was indeed a student, or was he disguised as a student? Obviously, he would have carried out a recce. He knew exactly what he was supposed to do, and that, of course, would be something alarming for the military. The military, on the other hand, would have seen a student, a young kid walking towards them. They do encourage such children to approach them so that they instill a spirit in those kids. So, indeed, they were taken by surprise. Now, of course, they won't be taking anything lightly.
And what does this say about the military operations? We've seen so many of them, the military operations against groups like the Pakistani Taliban, which the government is carrying out in order to weaken these groups. It doesn't seem to be working.
Well, it is working in certain areas, but what is happening is that when the military tries to consolidate a particular area, these people filter out. Now, Mardan is a trouble spot because a lot of the fighters from Bunair, from Swat, other regions have come. They're seeking refuge in the Mardan area. There have been attacks in the past also. The Deputy Inspector General was also attacked by a suicide bomber. He, of course, survived, but it shows that Mardan has become a place where these fighters are able to come into the city and then carry out those attacks. The military, of course, will now have to think seriously about doing something to restore order in that particular district.
Kamal, thanks very much indeed for that update. Kamal Haider in Islamabad there. Now, reports from India suggest the country has formally agreed to resume peace talks with Pakistan. Dialogue was broken off after the 2008 Mumbai attacks, which India blames on Pakistan-based fighters. Fresh talks will be a crucial step forward in improving ties and regional security. Pakistan won't confirm the move, but says things are moving forward. Still to come this half hour on Al Jazeera. Tunisia's interim government promised to release the country's political prisoners. So why are there still 1,000 behind bars? And no more negotiations. Military talks on the Korean Peninsula grind to a halt after the North walks out on the South.
Very cold weather to come across a good part of North America. This wintry plunge is set to persist. We've got snow now making its way away from the central and southern plains. That will sweep its way through quite quickly, actually, as we go on through the course of Thursday. So brighter skies coming in behind, but boy, is it going to be cold. -4, a top temperature for New York, and -12 there for Ottawa. Struggling around freezing for DC, and we're looking at highs of just 9 degrees in Atlanta. About the only warmth I can offer you really is going to be down towards that southeastern corner, 26 there in Miami. Even Dallas will struggle to reach freezing. -2 could be the top temperature here on Thursday then. Some warmth too into the western side of the US, and notice some snow coming into BC, so western parts of Canada still staying very wintry once again. That snow pushing in over the higher ground. Come down into the Caribbean, and there's quite a rash of showers here. Some wetter weather just making its way across the Gulf of Mexico. Not too bad for the Greater Antilles, and even the Lesser Antilles I think should stay largely dry, but down towards the south, Trinidad and Tobago, maybe pushing as far north as Barbados, could see 1 or 2 sharp showers. Showers or longer spells of rain continue to drive their way into that western side of Europe, but on a southwesterly wind, it's mild. Temperatures getting up to around 12 degrees Celsius, but cold on the other side of Europe with Moscow at -13 degrees.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back. You're with Al Jazeera. Let's remind you of the top stories here. A suicide bomber in a school uniform has attacked a military base in northwest Pakistan, killing 30 troops and wounded 18 others. This happened in the town of Mardan, near the Afghan border. The 17th day of protests getting underway in Egypt, with thousands of workers expected to continue their own call for change. Egypt continues to resist pressure from key ally, the United States, which insists more must be done to meet the protesters' demands. Well, as Egypt waits for democratic transition, Tunisia is facing criticism from human rights groups for its slow moves towards reform. Despite a promise to release all political prisoners, around 1,000 are still in custody. Nazanin Moshiri reports from Tunis.
The bench sheikhs are waiting for the release of their son. Nour el-Haq is a political prisoner, serving a 3-year sentence. Convicted under Tunisian anti-terror laws for publishing banned materials online, his family say he's innocent and was targeted for his religious beliefs.
It is so unjust. All these kids have done is be good Muslims. Religion here is a crime. Having a beard is a crime. Wearing a veil is a crime.
Najia says her son, the youngest in the family, has been harassed by the secret police since he was 14.
Imagine they put him with criminals. Imagine what I feel when my son used to live in a clean environment and now lives in a horrid place.
Mohammed Abu knows what that's like. He was a political prisoner under Ben Ali, detained for 16 months for writing an article critical of the regime.
Prisoners would be taken out by night in the winter, naked. They were tortured and beaten. They were made to imitate chicken sounds or animals. The aim was to destroy the morale of the prisoners.
Things are different now. Ben Ali is gone. A new caretaker government says it will promote freedom of speech and democracy. But it's not easy reversing years of dictatorship. One of the first promises made by this new interim government was an amnesty for all political prisoners. Some detainees have been released and others escaped in the days following Ben Ali's fall. But the authorities have failed to do anything about those convicted under Tunisia's anti-terrorism laws. The former president, Ben Ali, was an important American ally in their war on terror. But human rights groups say the law was used as an excuse to oppress the opposition.
They were not convicted of committing any terrorist acts or possessing explosives. They were usually convicted for either talking about going to Iraq to join the jihad or talking about going to Somalia. And so, in other words, they were convicted for their intentions and not for their acts.
A new emergency law gives the acting president powers to release all political prisoners. The Ben Sheikhs hope this weekly journey to visit their son in jail will be their last. Nazanin Mashiri, Al Jazeera, Tunis.
Now, shares have soared more than 15% on the news that the New York Stock Exchange could soon have new owners in Europe. Advanced discussions on a merger are underway with the operator of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange, the Deutsche Börse.